So let me tell you, he did a video for us that was truly, truly amazing. When we had that, don't give me the eclipse, when we did the eclipse. So he was one of the ones that just showcased and shared some of the literary works out there, doing that totality of Texas, totality over Texas, right? So let's get it started. Before the audience may not know who you are, and hopefully the audience knows who I am. I am co-owner of the Doc Bookshop. My name is Danya Craddock, and I want my panel to introduce themselves. We have Stephanie Seaton. No, we have Stephanie. Yes, Stephanie Seaton. How many pounds are you? And our girl Sherry Buckley Brown, who's been doing a dynamic job on social media. My goodness, I can try to keep up. And Miss Neek, my alter, my similar personality, my that's why they gotta separate us because there's a high energy between us. But on a serious note, I really would like the audience, the virtual and in-store, to get to know our panelists by having them introduce themselves. Yeah, just the introduction.
So my name is Arthur Stephanie M. Seaton. First of all, I'm a minister of the gospel, and then I'm an author. And I'm just happy to be here today and to be on the panel.
Hello, all. I am Miss Neek, also known as Miss Neek Remip. I am a motivational speaker, published author, serial entrepreneur, mentor, coach, social media influencer, etc., etc., etc. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sherry Buckley Brown, and I'm an author and I'm a life coach. And this is my first book, and so I'm really excited to be here in this fabulous venue.
I should just have y'all keep me.
I also wanted to mention I also have a podcast, and I forgot about it until right now. If you want to be a guest, it is the Stephanie M. Seaton Sunday Show. And it goes live on Facebook. So if you would like to be part of that, you can also reach out to me for that.
I want to be on the show.
This segment is called Life Stories, and I read quite a few of the bios, and it says you became motivated because of your experience in life. Tell us some of that experience and what motivated you to write these books. So I want to start with you, Stephanie, East Texas. Yeah, I don't think you told everybody you were from the T-Town, Smith County.
So yes, I am from Tyler, Texas. I do a lot of business here in Dallas and in Houston, but I am from East Texas. And what motivated me to start telling my story was I was a broken person. It started in childhood. I was birthed into a broken family, a dysfunctional family. And so one of those families where what happens in this house stays in this house, one of those kind of things. And so those things went on through childhood, through adulthood, showed up in the choices of marriages that ended in divorces. Because when you're broken, it's not something that just gets better because you change partners or you change atmospheres if you don't actually do the internal work. And so the gist of it is I went through life a lot of my years broken and trying to figure out how to get it right, but not knowing how to get it right. And so what happened is less than a year ago now, I had an encounter with the Lord where, I've been in church all my life. And I've been ministering to people, but yet I was still broken while I was ministering to people. But I had an encounter where I realized that, okay, something's got to change. I don't want to keep making the same decisions and ending up with the same results. And so I decided to start looking at the part that I played in the things that happened in my life. And so that caused me to have to take some responsibility. I started looking and asking questions to my parents because I wanted to know the things that I went through. I went through molestation. I went through abuse from family members. I had conversations with people that nothing happened when these things happened. And I wanted to know how can a child be molested and tell people in the family and nothing happens. So I began to dig deeper and to find out these were things that were not only cultural, but generational. And so I decided not to be bound by these things anymore. I knew there was something bigger, something greater. And so as I went through this journey, not only was I holding myself accountable for the marriages, the relationships, marrying people that didn't even qualify, things like that. My first husband actually confessed to me that he had cheated on me with 7 different people. And I thought that meant he loved me because he told me, because I hadn't seen love. I hadn't seen a functional relationship between a man and a woman because my parents were divorced. My dad wasn't in the picture. So, okay, he's telling me this. I didn't have to find out. He loves me. Let's get married. But as you're going in life and the Lord began to minister to my heart and to my mind and my spirit, I got hold, and then that self-care thing came in, and I started setting boundaries and standards. And so it helped me to be able to reflect on all of my life. And pretty much once the Lord got me to a point of being healed, delivered, and set free, that's when I got a voice. And so once I got the voice to be able to say, you know what, I am going to talk about the things that happened in the house. I am going to talk about the things that the little girl inside of me never got to say. I'm going to tell, how I felt when these adults, not just my parents, but just adults, period, in my life made decisions. And I had to suffer the consequences, but I never got to say how I felt in the moment. And so the very first book that I wrote was called The Woman at the Well, which is pretty much my biography, but I wrote through a character because it was safe.
Now, before we introduce that, I want you to stop right there. But before we introduce your books, we're gonna go that on the third round.
Okay.
Introduce your books, but I want to get everybody's story.
Just the story, yeah.
Because
Okay.
we're dealing with life stories.
Okay.
And so then we're going to go into the book and
Okay.
how that was healing for
Yeah.
you and how you can use that to heal other people.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go into your book.
So that's the basis of what put me in the point of being able to begin to write.
Yes.
Okay, so, wow. Stephanie and I had personal conversations. We kind of know that our stories kind of align in a lot of places. So actually, what started me writing is literally I've been writing my whole life. Since I was old enough to form a sentence, I've been writing. I didn't know, I just like to write. I didn't know that writing was going to be my outlet. And then I lived a little bit and it became my outlet because writing was all I had. Much like Stephanie, I couldn't trust the adults around me in my environment, so I couldn't tell anybody what was going on. And of course, in that same mindset, what goes on in this house stays in this house. You're not allowed to share what's going on, what your experiences are, in the household. So I had nothing but writing. And so I initially started writing poetry. Poetry is my first passion. I actually published a book of poetry. And that was just what I had. And that evolved to, me now, publishing a memoir. And then now I'm like on this writing thing that I just can't get off of because it's so therapeutic. But as far as what started me on this journey, I had to have a way to vent. I had to have a way to get things out. And unfortunately, even at a time, writing had been stripped from me too, because I had a diary which had a lock, and my aunt violated me by finding my diary and not just finding it, breaking into it, and then showing my grandmother. And my grandmother, I got beat because she didn't like what she read in my diary. So even for a moment, I experienced where the only avenue I had, the only safe space I had been even ripped from me. So even for a while, I couldn't even write. I literally had no avenue. Imagine being a child, being faced with so much violence, being beaten, being sexually assaulted, all these different things. And the only thing that gave me that gave me a pinhole in my balloon, just to let some of it go, was now plugged. Just let that marinate on you for a minute. Just figure out how you would feel if you had absolutely no way to release some of that pressure.
That's good. Yeah, so for me, I went through My mom, I'm from a domestic violence background, and I lost my mom at the hands of my dad. And so for years, I've held on to this voice that I kind of didn't speak about. Like, when you tell little lies, people would ask you what happened to your mom, and you kind of like make all these things up. And I just decided I had gotten to a point in my life where I was like, you know what are you going to do with this? And how long are you going to sit on this? So I had journals throughout my life that I just went back and decided, it's time for me to tell this story. And if it can touch someone's life, then you really need to do it. It's just put on my heart. For me, I overcompensated throughout the years. I was the baby of the family, it was 5 of us. And I got to a point where I was trying to save like everyone. Yes. Everyone. I'm like, I wanted everyone to be happy. And I just would overcompensated, overcommitted. I was determined that, corporate America couldn't tell me that I'm not going to be successful. So I got every degree. I got every professional, certification that I could get. And none of it really made me happy. I just got to the point where I was like, if you've ever screamed to the top of your lungs but you don't hear a word, yes, that's where I was at. And so this book is about generational trauma. It's about empowering people that, we all have trauma. Like I went to a retreat, like 2 retreats recently, and all these women had the same story. We just looked different. We were different ages, but they were at different levels in their life. They were burnt out. They were going through some trauma that they had, or they were burnt out from their jobs. But we all get to this point, and we just try to hold on to it. Back then, when this happened, we got no counseling. It didn't happen. And so it was like, it wasn't swept under the rug because it was, my father went to jail behind it, but still, it was kind of unspoken. And it tore generation after generation after generation up. And so this is my first time out the gate with this book, and I wrote it from my feelings. You might see some of yourself with stories that I told when we would travel to Mississippi, and we would eat fried chicken in the car. You'll see those stories. You'll see some funny stories, but you'll see at the end where it's about empowering when things get hard, when you face trauma, because you're going to face it. You got to get back up. You got to fight.
Well, keep the microphone because you've already started diving into your book, and since we're already there, I want to go ahead and say, what can people learn from reading your book? And I say your book is, all the books are tremendous, but your story, your experience. I've always been curious. Seeing what happens to families, seeing the violence that happened to young people. Even today, you find that relationships go bad. There's fatal attraction. A lot of people are starting to, dive into that fatal attraction series that's on TV. I can't remember what station. But what happens to children that lose their? In a sense, you lose both parents.
You do.
And how can that help someone, even family members, because you're telling a story that a lot of children today are going through.
Yeah. Well, the hope for this book is that people recognize when it comes to kids and trauma, that you have to acknowledge it. You have to take the steps. I also lost my sister at 40. She passed of a heart attack, and I took her boys in. It was so ironic because my mom, I was 12, and my nephew was 12 when my sister passed. So I took him in, and I could relate so much to that because I his hurt and his pain, I could get it. And so I made sure that he went to counseling, and we went through our stuff together. But the book sheds the light on the things that we can't ignore, and you have to take the steps that you can't hide. And so that's what I'm trying to say with this book, is that you have got to take steps to make sure people are okay. And even if they say that they're fine, they're not fine. You got to continue on, because there's triggers, and you never really, you don't get over it, you get through it. That's right. And so I would just say why I really wanted to shed light on this is because we carry the trauma throughout every day kind of your lives, and you have to take the blinders off, and you have to face that things are gonna have it, and maybe everybody's is not as traumatic as mine, right? But it doesn't matter because it could be a car accident that you can get in that traumatizes you. Trauma is trauma, and you can't ignore it. So yeah, and so I want to just get people to take the steps and do the work. Do the work.
Donna, she's our timekeeper, but when I don't keep time, because I get so involved in stories.
So
But,
years.
you know, there is, I want to hear from, real quick from each one of you and relate to your book. We're going to have you back, especially during our I call it the Purple Month in October, where you're dealing with domestic violence, and see maybe we can all get together and just kind of really, you know, dive in so we can kind of work with our community with healing and prevention. Okay, let's oh my God, let's do prevention, and that's going to take, you know, I might have to be y'all in June for Men's Month because okay, let me go ahead.
But one thing you said, younger kids are now having, like, they're more depressed now than ever. It's sad.
Oh my God.
You
Okay.
might need to do some mental.
Oh my God.
Whatever, but you do gotta wrap this.
So just to piggyback off this queen, again, our stories may be so different yet so parallel. You know, my book again entitled "If My Past Wasn't So Dark, My Future Wouldn't Shine So Bright." This encompasses what my life was like between the ages of 8 and 16. So between the ages of 8 and 16, I had experienced being sexually abused. I watched my mother live through 2 domestic relationships. I watched the man that ultimately was the beginner of my molestation, because he was not the only one, but he was the one who initiated, my encounters with being molested. I watched him beat his child out of my mother. I watched her have a miscarriage in the corner of our living room. We were then. I became my mother's enemy, and she became very, very violent toward me to a point where I had to be removed from our home. My most gruesome beating that I got from her, she beat me so bad that I blacked out. And when I woke up, I walked up the stairs into the bedroom, and all I saw was lumps. All I had was lumps and lumps all over my face. I was maybe 9 years old. And so it gets really dark. My book does not have a super duper like fantabulous ending because I'm living my best ending. So I will be, writing a sequel essentially to my memoir. Okay, but it does leave on a higher note than where it was. But basically, my book, I talk about a lot of things. Because of how the beginning of my life started, of course, I spiraled it down. In 15, I was pregnant. I got pregnant on purpose. I was in group homes. I did the family member thing. I learned that I was just a paycheck to them, and they quickly gave up that check when they realized they actually had to do some stuff for me. They didn't really want to. And so at 15, I became pregnant. Unfortunately, I also experienced losing that child to stillborn. I had 2 nervous breakdowns by the time I was 21. Okay, so when I say my past was dark, it was dark. Now let me tell you why I wrote this book. Because when I was going through all that I was going through, there was not a single person, not a single book, not a single video, not a single movie. There was nothing. I had nothing to draw from. I had no one to relate to. I had nothing, and so I felt like, well, if I'm going through all of this and I'm literally looking for somebody else who can just say they went through it too, or, that this happened to them too, and there wasn't. So I made sure that I put my vulnerability on display so that I could be the voice that I was looking for when no one, when I was going through what I was going through. So the whole point of me writing my book and putting my story out there is to not only bring awareness, but also to let those who are going through this, that you are not alone. In fact, there are some people out here, and you're a superhero still.
Sure, we're gonna let you close it out, take it home. We clean up the home, right? So take it home and cleaning up the home. So you're dealing with life stories, so you can't really, you know, magnify, but you take this clothes out, you clean up the home.
So with closing out, cleaning up the home, pretty much it's about doing self-care. It's getting to a point that you love yourself enough to want to be different. We don't have to stay in the environment that we were raised in. We don't have to believe the things that we were told that what happens in this house stays in this house. That doesn't have to be the story for us. We have the ability to get to know the Lord for ourselves, to make choices about loving ourselves, setting standards and boundaries. And people who cannot respect those standards and boundaries, you know, we limit our time with those people, even if they're relatives, even if they're parents, even if they're friends. And so we have to get to a point of standing up for ourselves. And so regardless of whatever type of abuse we have went through and things that have been thrown at us to take us off track, I would say that would be the cleanup, to learn to love yourself so that you don't allow these things to continue to follow you and they become healed traumas versus traumas affecting your life.
And
We do need to have you give a quick line about each book because you got these books before us. So if you can do it real quick, Donna's not right here.
So the books that I have available today are The Woman at the Well, which is a book about a life story. It talks about different events that happen in life. The Abusive Christian Marriage, married to a man of God. He was supposed to be a man of God, but the things that happened behind closed doors, there was nothing godly about it. And then The Open Door, when we have issues and things that go on in our lives, we as Christians are supposed to seek the Lord's guidance and direction. A particular family member decided to call a psychic hotline, and when she called that psychic hotline, pretty much what it did is it opened a demonic door that came in and attacked my family. And the Lord used me greatly in that deliverance of that situation. But it's just a lesson that talks about pretty much dependent on the Lord when things are going on. You don't consult outside sources because there's consequences. That quick phone call to the psychic hotline that was done in private was openly displayed when you lost everything, when everything changed. And then the last book, The Voice of the Holy Spirit, that is a book that gives personal testimonies of things that the Lord has done supernaturally in my life. The Lord has had me to quit jobs, to make decisions that didn't make sense in the natural mind. I was a single parent, taking care of my mom and myself, and the Lord told me to quit my job where I made really good money. Didn't really want to do that, but literally at lunch I said, okay, I'm turning in my company credit card, I'm turning in my keys, I'm doing all this, and I'm leaving. They were, where are you going? I said, I'm not coming back. And for 5 months I was unemployed, no unemployment, but God provided. I still have the same house, I still have the same car. Checks started showing up in the mail, checks that didn't make sense. Like Wells Fargo sent me a check for, what do you call those, overdraft fees? Wells Fargo wrote me a letter. They apologized to me and gave me $600 for overdraft fees that I incurred on purpose. And I got the check. And I was just like, this doesn't make sense. But that's what God will do for you when you trust him, when you hear his voice clearly and he tells you to do something, even if it doesn't make sense. You know, I know his track record enough and with the things that he's allowed me to survive. And so this is what the voice of the Holy Spirit, it has a lot of testimonies in there, things that, like I said, they don't make sense to natural mind, but I'm a water walker. And so that's what that talks about. So if you want your faith to be increased, that would be the book for you to read.
okay, Diane.
I love that she said I'm a water walker. Thank you very much.
Oh, give him a hand. Wonderful session. We got to have you all back, okay? Because y'all beat. Listen. And it would.
Okay, and if you get any of the author's books today, we have that wonderful display back there for, you know, we aligned everything with
Reading of the West.
Reading of the West, and Beyonce had her album released. The vinyl came out today, and so we have the vinyl because we have a whole vinyl section. So we parallel those two movements, and so we have a free display. So if you buy any of the books from any of the authors here, you're automatically entered into a drawing for that whole display. And it's online as well as in-store. So the in-store participants don't have to compete with the online community. We have 2 winning packages that you can get to start or enhance your reading of the West Library. So we have 2 more panels coming up, right? And then we have our feature.
The next?
No, we have 2 more panels and then our feature.
Okay, we're gonna make it real quick, Joaquin. Okay, fiction is next, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, and then we're going to a couple poetry, and then we go to our feature poet. So that's how we're gonna flow with it. Okay.
The world champion of spoken word is amongst us, you guys. He's been